Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers. I'm talking about this interesting book, Shackleton, on the law and practice of meetings, which is a very relevant book for many people. I've given it the title on the internet and in the journals where it's been reviewed as meeting the best practice of the modern agenda. This is the 11th edition. It's an old book now, but you can see how it's laid out with reference numbers on the side and so forth, and paragraphed very helpfully, with some rather useful index points at the back and some good tables of cases at the front. It's welcome news, as far as I'm concerned, to read through this new edition, because it remains clearly the most authoritative source of information on the law relating to both company and non-company meetings. And it's very handy for a wide range of cases which all sorts of legal professionals might encounter. It's a heavy book, there's no question about it. Lots of tables, that sort of thing, but it does give you a good feel for what you need to know if you're running a meeting. Let me tell you a little story. It's 75 years old, this particular book, but I recall first hearing about it at a parish council meeting some 25 years ago, when we had a major planning dispute, and the then chairman, being of a nervous disposition, wanted something by way of a comforter in case the objectors became unruly, which of course they did. So he brought along Shackleton. It wasn't quite like this, as I recall, but he didn't need it, but it was there with his gavel as a reminder of what to do if the occasion arose. It's not a particularly heavy book, but certainly it was useful. Probably its greatest value for many people is the clarification of the roles of those at meetings and the sorts of procedures to be followed. All the details and the circumstances are well covered in depth, and companies will always be, in my view, the leader in terms of using this work, because it's primary for them, and it's been updated to include the Companies Act 2006 coming into force. Other heavy users, and it's actually covered more towards the back of the book, will be local government, because clearly local government is a big area in terms of consultation with the new legislation. So one of the things that many people might find this book useful for is trying to devise ways of dealing with some of the big problems of consultation after the Sustainable Communities Act under the current legislation in Parliament. So, for instance, if Parliament's decreed bans on, say, morality issues when looking at sex establishment licenses, or health issues over mast sightings, the book's excellent as a precedent, because it's a statement of what can actually be done. But don't be fooled. You can see it has its uses, although any potential objectors may well soon find that Shackleton sets out the structure of the meeting so beautifully that there really is little in the way of manoeuvring to get round the procedures. Certainly many objectors have found that in the past. So apart from the role and function of public meetings and the transaction of business, there are important additional areas included as well, which are things like defamatory statements at meetings. We're talking here about reputation and the law, which is a very big growth area at the moment with the internet. Also the preparation of meetings and breach of the peace. The four authors, and they're named here, Madeleine Cords, John Pugh Smith, Alec Ruck Keane and James Burton, they're the people who put this together, and Mr. Pugh Smith has written the foreword, by the way, which is quite a useful indication of where things are going. But the four authors have provided a step-by-step account of meetings with useful practical overviews throughout. And I like the highlighting of problems in particular, which can potentially arise with suggested ways of resolving tricky issues. There are 30 chapters altogether in the book, with a detailed table of cases at the front and a concise index which I found very useful at the back. There are no web links, but that's not surprising because of the way that the book is written, although I suspect that they will come in the future. And the footnotes, of course, are a very useful mine of excellent detail, very thoroughly prepared. I think I can say that Shackleton covers everything that you would ever need to know about meetings in one volume. It's 400 pages long, just under, so it's pretty manageable. And Pugh Smith, who I mentioned earlier, describes the work as authoritative, quite rightly, and it contains, quote, a complete statement of the law with detailed practical guidance, which he hopes readers will find of particular help as a reference resource. Well, that's exactly what it is. So yes, it's all of those things. There's just one thing more I might draw to your attention, and that is when I first read some of the pages, right at the beginning, I realised that the book had one additional attribute on the legal right to give it a particular point of view, because it looks at the historic view of what is the right of a public meeting today, covering issues such as freedom of expression, obviously now enshrined in the Human Rights Act, human rights itself, and the excellent chapter 10 on the principles of natural justice, which I think are very well set out here and are nearly always misinterpreted by members of the public, and quite often by some people in local government and elsewhere. However, there's no misinterpretation about Shackleton, which meets all the requirements of the modern meeting as the definitive statement of what to do and what not to do. It's invaluable. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.